Back to the phone lines. We'll talk next to Ryan, Nashville, Tennessee. Ryan, how are you?
Hey, I'm very good. I had a conversation just a few minutes ago with a Muslim man from Dubai in the United Emirates, and it was a wonderful conversation. But he brought up some interesting questions I wanted to get your take on.
Sure.
It was about, obviously the land and Jerusalem or Israel. It just seemed like are they fighting over the land what's going on over there, all kind of based upon the land? Because I mean, I told him, I was like, if it were just land, I would just go to Hawaii. I would just say you can have it. But is it because God's land? Is there a contradiction in what they believe? And also, he didn't believe. I mentioned that Israel was, thousands of years old, and he was like, no, it's only like 40, 50 years old. And I mentioned the 6-day war to him, and they just kind of hesitant to believe that was true and things like that. I just want to get your take on. I know it's kind of a loaded question, but
no, I mean it's a good question, and I think what we have to look at is you can't ever unscramble the egg. So whether there were atrocities that were committed 40, 50 years ago in terms of the establishment of the State of Israel, you can't unscramble the egg today. And therefore, as Christians, what we ought to be is those who are not necessarily pro-Palestinian, but pro-peace, not necessarily pro-Jew, but pro-justice. And we shouldn't look at the land being anyone's divine right. I mean, there's no biblical basis whatsoever to say that the land belongs to a person of a particular ethnicity. That idea is foreign to the Scriptures. The land promises that were made in the Bible were finally fulfilled in Jesus Christ, who leads the spiritual descendants of Abraham into paradise restored. And therefore, the Jerusalem that we long for is not a Jerusalem that is below, but a Jerusalem that is above. She is free, says Paul in Galatians chapter 4, and she is our mother. So the promise is typologically fulfilled in the Lord, ultimately, who is the locus of the land. And again, in the final future, the promise of the land will be fully and finally consummated when paradise lost will be reconstituted as paradise restored. I was just looking at something that I've written about and pointed out that Canaan is typological of a renewed cosmos. And therefore, Abraham was anything but a Christian Zionist. Like Isaac, like Jacob, he viewed living in the promised land in the same way that a stranger views living in a foreign country. Why? Well, because, as the writer of Hebrews makes plain, he was looking forward to a city with foundations whose architect and builder is God. So Abraham looked beyond binding borders and boundaries to a day in which the meek, as Jesus put it, would inherit the earth.
Wow, that's awesome. So that's how Jews in Israel, they should be believing the same thing. They should be having the same sentiment.
Well, I mean, I think whether it's apartheid in South Africa, whether it's racism in America, whether it is racism in the hallowed regions of the Holy Land, it is always wrong. God does not respect people because of their birth mother or their genealogy. It's never been that in the whole of Scripture. I mean, you look in the Old Testament and you find Rahab, a prostitute, in the lineage of Jesus Christ, though she is a Canaanite. You find Esther in the day of her glory, when she's raised up by God to save the Jews from certain destruction under Haman. You have the text telling us there that on that day, many different people from many different nations became Jews. They couldn't change their genealogy, but they could follow Yahweh, the God of Israel, and therefore they were brought into all the types and shadows pointing forward to Jesus Christ. Ruth was a Moabite. The Moabites were the arch enemy of Israel. She too is in the lineage of Jesus Christ. The Egyptians that left in the exile with the Israelites, they are true Israel as well. So God is not a respecter of people, and Peter finally recognized that in Acts chapter 10, verse 34. After he's been shown a vision, he then responds to the vision that God has shown him by saying, now I finally get it. God does not show favoritism, and neither should we. We should again be for peace and justice and for the principles of the kingdom. And I have expanded on this in great detail in a book called The Apocalypse Code, which is available through the ministry of the Christian Research Institute